What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at how Manchester United drew to Burnley and how Burnley are going to be a very tough team to relegate this season and why I think they will stay up in the Premier League. But before we get into the tactics behind the match, check out both my books. They're online on Amazon and there's links in the description below. Also, be sure to check out Keyframe. It's how I'm making this video, but let's get right into it. So Burnley played in their natural 4-4-2, and their defensive structure throughout the match was on point. When they're on their game, Burnley might have one of the strongest, most well-organized defensive structures in the English Premier League. This was also complemented by Man U's structure in their offensive phase and how they struggled to go forward. Man U played in a back four that saw their fullbacks play more narrow on the inside part of the wide corridor. They also went with an asymmetric midfield three, seeing Pogba play in a deeper role, but still above the height of Scott McTominay, the holding midfielder, and Bruno Fernandes had the freedom as the number 10. We see Marcus Rashford coming in off the wing, creating an overload in the left-hand half space along Bruno Fernandes, which is part of this Ralph Rangnick's Man U, and creating these inside wide players and having the potential to overload the space between the lines. Then on the weak side, we have the full width being created by Jadon Sancho. Now here we can see all 11 players for Burnley, and we can start to see why they are so good in the defensive phase. Burnley stagger their last two lines of defense when they are without the ball. And what this means is they have diagonal connections between these players that maximize the use of cover shadows and control the space between the lines. Also, on the weak side, we start to see the wide midfielder start to cheat and increase the distance between him and the weak side holding midfielder. This allows him to shift and press quicker to the weak side, not allowing Man U to circulate the ball and progress around the block as some teams do. Also, the forwards cover the holding midfielder, forcing Man U to circulate possession back in front of Burnley's defensive block and not allowing them to go diagonally and disrupt the shifting of Burnley. Now, when we talk about compactness and space between the lines, we see here there's only about 10 yards between the defensive line and the midfield line for Burnley. This is a very compact structure, especially in the midfield third, and as they get closer to their own goal and get closer to shaping up in a low block, these spaces decrease even more. So this often leads to offensive midfielders like Bruno Fernandes either trying to make these runs in behind, as he does off the shoulder of the central defenders, or having the players fan out into the wide area and creating inefficiency throughout the attack. But when Bruno Fernandes does make these runs, we see both central defenders' hips are turned, they can see the ball, and they're ready to then move back and drop into a deeper area and protect against a direct pass. Now we start to move closer to the Burnley's goal, and now we start to see a decrease in vertical compactness. And what I mean by this is the space between the lines decreases and Burnley get more compact, as I should say. The two forwards still take care of the holding midfielder, forcing circulation to occur in front of the Burnley defense and not allowing them to skip passes and speed up the circulation. We also have this asymmetric midfield structure from Man U that often leaves the half space open to be dynamically occupied by a Jadon Sancho or Cavani coming across the defenders. But this was more than acceptable for the Burnley defense, as they were very easily able to shift into these positions, and when their wide midfielder would press the full back of Luke Shaw, his natural cover shadow would pretty much control any diagonal passes into these dangerous areas. Now Burnley in possession would have one fullback deep, usually the ball side fullback would be the one who would be deeper, and their two holding midfielders would then be able to establish control when they did have the ball and prepare for a second ball if they did go direct. This often allowed for space to be created too higher up the field for an inverted wide midfielder or the midfielder to create width and draw out the defenders of Man U to create space in behind for a player like Rodriguez or Weghorst to drop deeper, acting as the target man. Again, their weak side wide midfielder also would invert, often creating a four-man midfield, but in this situation, it's just the three-man midfield with the wide midfielder dropping more narrow, allowing him to be in a more active position to either join the attack or effectively transition. So as Burnley move up the field, we have our two holding midfielders supporting the attack and being in good positions to also counterpress or redirect a Manchester United transition. We have our wide midfielder inverting, and now we see the inverting of both wide midfielders. This brings the left side midfielder into a more narrow position, allowing freedom for Rodriguez to fan out wide, and Weghorst always occupying the space around the goal, acting as the player to finish these attacks. So we have players influencing the last line of Manchester United's defense, always looking to threaten in behind or drop deeper to combine with their teammates, while always having the implication of going forward and creating chances from their offensive moves. Now, of course, a big part of Burnley's play is when they do go direct. We have Rodriguez jumping up, contesting an uncontested 50-50 header after a goal kick, and now we really see the Burnley shape in their offensive phase. We have our four midfielders all narrow in perfect positions for second ball, creating positional superiority against Manchester United's players and a numerical advantage as well, having 5 players to Man U's 4 around the ball, and we see their defense starts to move up too, so that they decrease the space around the number 10 of Bruno Fernandes, and they can win the ball from this uncontested 50-50 and continue the attack going forward, or directly go forward via Weghorst, who's running in behind, just running off of the dropping Rodriguez, creating threat in behind while maintaining control through the holding midfielders and narrow fullbacks. That's where we're going to wrap up the analysis. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.